Viral Prime had never known chaos. The world was a quiet green jewel, full of forests, calm blue seas, and bright crystal cities that glowed softly under two suns. The Virelians were a gentle people. They built everything with care and balance, always avoiding risk. But that balance had been broken. Deep under the crust of Viral Prime, a massive mining shaft had collapsed. What should have been a simple excavation had turned into disaster when a chain of quakes cracked open the tunnels. The shockwaves rippled outward, threatening to trigger an even bigger quake that could destroy 3 nearby cities. Inside the control center, panic filled the air. "We cannot hold the crust stable much longer," said Chief Engineer Larev, his soft-frilled crest quivering with fear. "The resonance is growing. If it breaks free, the entire continent may shake." "Then we must call for rescue," said Counselor Rith, voice tight. "Send for the conquered fleets. Their stabilizer teams will know what to do." The emergency beacon went out, flashing across the stars. Help would come. It always did. Hours passed. The ground shuddered again, stronger this time. Small objects fell from shelves, and a deep groaning sound rose from the earth below. Virelian citizens gathered in the streets, frightened. Finally, the alert rang. Ships were arriving. But when the council saw them, their worry did not ease. The fleet that dropped out of FTL above Viral Prime was not the sleek silver rescue armada they had expected. Instead, a formation of rough angular ships appeared, paint-chipped, engines glowing a raw orange. They were loud and irregular, nothing like the calm, polished Concord vessels. "Identify them," Counselor Rith ordered. A moment later, the reply came. "They are humans." The council chamber went silent. Humans, the Deathworlders. Every child on Viral Prime knew the stories. Humanity came from a planet so hostile it had nearly killed its own species. Their world was filled with storms, predators, diseases, and violent climates. They had survived anyway, grown stronger through endless struggle. Some called them dangerous. Others called them reckless, and now they were here. Counselor Rith's frills trembled. "We requested trained Concord rescue crews." "Not them. Do we deny them landing?" asked Larev nervously. Before the council could decide, a signal came through from the human flagship. The image of a woman appeared on their main display. She wore a worn-out jumpsuit, streaked with grease, and behind her the bridge looked busy and noisy. "This is Captain Hayes of the Dauntless," she said, voice calm but firm. "We got your distress call. My crew is ready to assist." Counselor Rith hesitated. "Captain Hayes, with respect, are you qualified?" "This situation is delicate. The crust could collapse if we act too quickly." Hayes gave a sharp smile. "We've handled worse. Tell us where to land," the council argued. Some said they should refuse. Others said they had no time left. The quakes were growing. At last, Rith closed her eyes and nodded. "Very well. You may land, but understand, this is no ordinary disaster." "Understood," Hayes replied. "We'll see you on the surface." Moments later, the human fleet descended. Their ships roared through the sky, leaving bright trails behind them. Virelians gathered to watch, fear and curiosity mixing in their eyes. The ships were ugly, yes, but they landed with precision, kicking up dust but not harming the landing zone. When the ramps dropped, the humans emerged. They were taller and broader than Virelians, their faces hard but alert. They wore heavy suits of armor, carried strange tools, and walked with a confidence that seemed almost reckless. Captain Hayes approached the council delegation first. She removed her helmet, revealing short dark hair and sharp eyes that studied the alien officials quickly. "All right," she said briskly. "Show me the problem." Rith led them into the control center, still tense. The humans crowded around the holographic map of the crust. They listened as Larev explained the unstable fault lines and the trapped miners. When he finished, Hayes nodded once. "All right, we'll go down there." Larev's frills flared in shock. "You cannot." "It is too dangerous. The entire chamber could collapse." "Yeah," Hayes said simply. "That's why we're going." Her crew began unpacking equipment. They worked fast, almost too fast for the Virelians to follow. They modified drones, reinforced cables, and attached seismic sensors directly to their suits. "You are going in personally?" Rith asked, incredulous. Hayes gave a small grin. "We don't sit in orbit and watch people die. That's not how we do things." Within minutes, the human team descended into the shaft. The Virelians watched the feed from the helmet cams, holding their breath. The tunnels were unstable, rocks still falling. Dust clouds filled the air. Yet the humans moved with speed and purpose, shouting to one another, dragging equipment behind them. They didn't seem afraid at all. One human laughed after a near miss from a falling stone, the sound startling the Varelian observers. To them this was terrifying, but the humans looked alive, almost thrilled by the danger. "Why are they smiling?" Larev whispered. "Because," Rith said slowly, "they are Deathworlders. This is their element." Another quake hit, shaking the control center. Monitors flickered. "Captain Hayes," Rith called over the comms, voice urgent. "The readings are spiking. You must pull back." "Negative," Hayes replied, voice steady despite the rumble in the background. "We're almost to the trapped miners. Keep monitoring. We'll get them out." The Varelians could do nothing but watch as the humans pressed deeper into the collapsing tunnels, vanishing into the dust and darkness. For the first time, the Council began to wonder if perhaps the Deathworlders were exactly what they needed. The tunnels were a nightmare of dust, darkness, and sound. Every few minutes the earth groaned like some living creature in pain. Rocks slid from the walls and the floor shook underfoot, but the humans moved forward without hesitation. Captain Hayes led the way, her suit lights cutting a path through the dust. Behind her, Sergeant Vale and the rest of the team carried heavy equipment, drilling units, stabilizer struts, and cutting tools. "Sensor shows a big collapse ahead," Vale reported, checking his wrist display. "Miners should be just beyond it." "All right," Hayes said. "Let's clear it." They started working immediately. The humans moved like they had done this 1,000 times. Vale set charges carefully along the rubble pile, placing them by hand. Another crew member drove stabilizer rods into the walls to keep the tunnel from caving in on them. From the surface, the Varelians watched in silent amazement. "They are setting explosives?" Larev said, shocked. "That will make things worse." "No," one of Hayes' engineers replied calmly over the comms. "This is a shaped detonation. It will open a path without disturbing the fault line." The blast came a moment later, a sharp boom that shook the camera but cleared the way. Through the dust, the humans stepped into a new chamber, and there they found them, the trapped miners. A dozen Varelians huddled together near the far wall, exhausted and terrified. Their frills twitched weakly at the sight of the towering human figures. "You're safe now," Hayes said over the translator, voice firm but kind. "We're getting you out." The humans wasted no time. They carried injured miners in their arms, their strength making the task look easy. Those who could walk were guided carefully, but the ground shook again, harder this time. "Captain," Vale called, "we're reading a major surge coming from the southern fault. If it blows, this whole shaft is gone." Hayes cursed under her breath and switched to the surface channel. "Control, we have the miners, but the fault is about to give way," she said quickly. "We need to bleed off the pressure or the entire network collapses." "That is impossible," Larev cried. "There is no safe method to release that energy." Hayes gave a short, sharp laugh. "Lucky for you, we're not worried about safe." She turned to her team. "Vale, rig a vent line with the seismic drill. We're going to punch a release path and blow it before the wave builds." "On it," Vale said, already moving. The humans worked with incredible speed, assembling equipment from what looked like random scraps. One drove the drill deep into the unstable rock. Another primed a series of detonators while Hayes held the line at the entrance, making sure the miners stayed calm. From the control room, the Varelians could hardly believe what they were seeing. "They are redirecting the quake?" Rith whispered, stunned. "Yes," one of the humans confirmed through comms. "It will send the energy into an empty cavern instead of the city." "But what if it fails?" Larev asked. Hayes' voice came over the channel, steady as ever. "Then we all get buried. So we make sure it doesn't fail." When the drill hit the right depth, Vale signaled. "Vent line ready." "Good," Hayes said. "Everyone clear the chamber now." The miners were rushed back up the cleared tunnel, escorted by 2 humans. Hayes and Vale stayed behind, double-checking the setup. Then Hayes keyed the detonator. The blast was deafening, even over the comms. For a moment, the feed went white with dust and static. Then the shaking stopped. When the picture cleared, the chamber was still standing. The redirected energy had done exactly what Hayes planned, sent the quake into the far cavern where it could do no harm. On the surface, cheers broke out in the control room. "They did it," Rith said, hardly believing it. "They actually stopped the chain reaction." "Not stopped," Hayes corrected, her voice coming through with a tired smile. Just guided. Your planet did the rest. The humans began their climb back to the surface, slow but steady, carrying the last of the miners with them. When they finally emerged, they were coated in dust and sweat, their suits dented and scratched, but they were alive. The rescued miners rushed to their families, who cried and embraced them. The Varelian Council approached the human team carefully, still unsure what to say. You risked everything, Rith said quietly. You could have died. Hayes shrugged, brushing dust off her shoulder. Yeah, but then nobody would have been saved. And we're not big on losing people. Her team chuckled softly, as if near-death rescues were just another workday. That night, the humans stayed in the city. Despite their exhaustion, they spent hours helping Varelian engineers reinforce other weak tunnels and teach them how to set up early warning systems. The Varelians had expected violence, chaos, and recklessness. What they got was courage, skill, and a stubborn refusal to quit. For the first time in memory, the people of Virel Prime began to wonder if perhaps the Deathworlders were not monsters at all. Maybe they were exactly the kind of allies the galaxy needed. Virel Prime woke the next day under a calm sky. The quakes were gone. The threat had passed. For the first time in days, the people could walk their streets without fear. But the city felt different. Where fear had been, there was now something new: curiosity, respect, even pride. In the main plaza, the rescued miners stood with their families, still covered in bandages but smiling. They told anyone who would listen about the humans who had carried them out of the darkness. They did not run, said one miner. Even when the walls shook, they held the line until we were all safe. They laughed, said another, still in awe. How can anyone laugh while the ground tries to kill them? The stories spread quickly, and soon the plaza was full of citizens waiting to see the strangers who had saved them. Inside the council hall, Captain Hayes stood with her team, helmets tucked under their arms. They looked tired but ready, like people who would leave at a moment's notice for the next job. Counselor Rith stepped forward. His frills no longer trembled. Captain Hayes, he said formally, Virel Prime owes you its life. Without your actions, we would have lost an entire continent, perhaps even more. Hayes inclined her head slightly. We just did what we came here to do. That is precisely what amazes us, Rith replied. Most species would never have gone so deep. Never risked so much. Yet you did. Hayes gave a small, tired smile. Where we come from, you learn to act fast. Our homeworld doesn't forgive mistakes. It tries to kill you every day, so you either get strong or you don't last. The words made the counselors glance at each other. They had heard stories about Earth, about its violent storms and dangerous creatures. Now they began to understand what those stories really meant. You are not what we expected, Rith admitted. When we heard humans had come, we were afraid. You're not the first to say that, Hayes said with a little laugh. Most folks think we're trouble. Sometimes they're right. Her crew chuckled softly, but there was no pride in it, just honesty. Rith stepped closer. You saved every miner, Captain. You redirected a quake that could have killed thousands, and you did it with no promise of reward. Hayes shrugged. We don't leave people behind. Not on Earth and not anywhere else. There was a long pause as the council took in her words. Then Rith turned to the gathered crowd and raised his voice. Citizens of Virel Prime, today we honor those who came when others would not. We honor the Deathworlders. The plaza erupted in sound. Cheers rose from thousands of voices. The humans looked at one another, surprised but pleased. Later, a great feast was held in the city's open square. Long tables were set out, covered with food both Varelian and human safe. Children crowded near the humans, staring with wide eyes. Vale, the big sergeant, knelt down and showed them how his suit tools worked. The children squealed with excitement when he made the drill spin. Hayes sat with Rith, discussing ways to prevent future disasters. She explained how humans built earthquake-resistant cities, how they trained for emergencies, and how they taught even children what to do when disaster struck. You prepare your children? Rith asked, surprised. Hayes nodded. Because we have to. We teach them early so they can survive. Fear doesn't save lives, knowledge does. Rith looked thoughtful. Perhaps we have been too careful. We have always trusted that others would save us, that disaster would not come. But yesterday taught us we must be ready too. Over the next days, the humans worked side by side with Varelian engineers. They taught them how to build stronger supports, how to monitor fault lines better, and how to act quickly in a crisis. The Varelians were quick learners. They watched closely, asked questions, and even began inventing new devices using human ideas combined with their own advanced technology. By the time the Dauntless and her fleet were ready to leave, the two species had forged a new bond. At the spaceport, the entire council came to see the humans off. "Before this, we saw you only as dangerous creatures from a wild world," Rith said honestly. "But now we see you as something more. Partners, allies, friends." Hayes shook his hand firmly. "That's good to hear. The galaxy can be a dangerous place. It's better if we face it together." As the humans boarded their ships, children ran to wave at them. Some of them even wore makeshift helmets, pretending to be brave Deathworlders themselves. The human crew waved back before the ramps closed. Moments later, the ships rose into the sky, leaving white trails behind them as they climbed back into orbit. The Varelians watched until the ships vanished into the stars. "They are gone," Larev said softly. "No," Rith replied, smiling faintly. "They will come again. When someone else calls for help, they will come." He turned toward the horizon where the suns were rising. "And when they do, the galaxy will remember this day, the day the Deathworlders showed us that courage is not to be feared, but followed." And far above, the human fleet jumped back to the stars, already heading toward the next distress call, ready to face the next impossible challenge. Because that was what they did.